I just watched an episode of Charlie Rose. This is Saturday, October 10th. I'm still trying to put all these together in a very cohesive manner so people can easily determine I'm telling the truth. And I want to say to Michael, please remember the proverb: a quitter never wins and a winner never quits. And to thank you personally for your efforts. To read the chapter of Hebrews, number 11. To know that sometimes the harvest of our efforts is not realized as soon as we'd like to. But we are to continue in well-doing, for we have the promise of God that we will reap if we fail not, if we don't give up. Personally, I want to say to everyone that it is always right to do the right thing, regardless of what others choose to do, or whether or not you're successful in persuading them to do anything else good. I want to recap on some of my solutions because I know they sound rather radical to some people. When I say do away with the Federal Reserve, it was a criminal entity when it began, and it's a criminal entity to this day, and it's been one of the things that has enslaved us all. So get rid of it. It's that simple. The government has always had the power to mint whatever money necessary. It did not need to be taken over by any private individuals. In other words, it's the right of the people to empower the representatives of the people to print as much currency as necessary to have a uniform means of trade, what we call money. Now to get on to why I want to get rid of the corporate structure and Wall Street altogether. When you examine the nature of the beast, that is an ingenious method to have private profiteering without private responsibility, and is enslaving the masses. The very nature of the beast is called greed, or the love of money, which God says is the root of all evil. When it is obviously causing certain greedy individuals to look all over the world for nothing more than slaves, whoever will work for the very lowest wages to maximize their personal gains. Furthermore, when people take money or the resources of this country and then only throw money after money, in other words, what they're doing with their life is nothing. They are contributing nothing in the forms of products or services. But as a result of what they are doing is, in their greed, lowering quality of life for the vast majority of the souls on earth. In other words, capitalism without Christianity causes greed so bad as to engender an epidemic of oppression and tyranny. This is the result of large multinationals that basically have a few people standing up saying, I've got money, who will slave for me? This is not the way we are to interact with one another. Capitalism with Christianity worked like this. Somebody had an idea for a product or a service and couldn't make that product or service manifest without the assistance of others. So they said, hey brother, hey sister, I've got this vision, But in order to actually make it happen, I need your help. And in those days, it was realized that no one was more important in that relationship. That the employer needed those people to make the vision happen. To make things actually manifest in the world. And as such, they esteemed their co-workers because people interacted with one another and knew one another. And knew they had a responsibility to each other. That neither the employer or the employee could make a living, a product, or a service without each other. But when you detach the employer by public stock trading, in other words, the persons with the money, they are no longer interacting with, the people that are actually making their vision happen, which are essential for products and services for all of us. And as such, we are creating, by public stock trading, persons that without conscience are only concerned about how much return on the dollar they get for their investment. When I say if we do away with Wall Street altogether, stocks, options, huge multinationals, and we go back to small companies, in order for a person to continue to grow their personal wealth, it will require them to go back once again to what made this country great. Innovations, products, services, in order to, get gain. In other words, increase their personal wealth, and by doing so, they're actually increasing quality of life for those that participate, rather than the oppression we see today. As I see it, greed has created treasonous individuals. Frankly, I think if the global governments around the world would all agree to do away with public stock trading, to once again hold people and persons accountable for all products and services, both the employer and the employees, then it will do away with the financial crisis that we see happening now as a result of personal and corporate greed that are devoid of the values of human altruism, because they no longer meet with people face to face, and so can then justify easily, without any conscious thought, of oppressive slave wages and working conditions. So I'm not just saying radical measures that have, taken no thought, but I'm saying examine the nature of the beasts of the problems. Look at the cause of the problems. Look at the root cause of the problems. A few greedy individuals on earth are making life hell on earth for everyone else, because they're so greedy that they just can't stop themselves from amassing more and more blood-soaked bills, regardless of what it does to the whole world and the quality of life for mass billions of people on this earth. So if the people would just say, you know what? Before we had the stock exchange, we had products, industrialization, innovations. people had to participate in society by providing a product or a service, or they did not get gain. But when we went to these other forms or structures of entities, we're creating situations of personal greed so extreme and wealth concentrated in these greedy individuals so extreme that they are taking nations captive by hoarding all that money to themselves. So I want to attack the people responsible, the personal greedy individuals that are hoarding all the natural resources of the world, that are oppressing mass millions, if not billions of souls on earth due to their personal greed, and say to those individuals, men and women, the right thing to do is to use your wealth to manifest good and godly products and services, not to be hoarding all that money to yourselves, and to give a living wage. The only way you're going to know what that living wage is for your CEOs, as far as I'm concerned, to be limited to at least 1 year of making what they consider is just wages for the very lowest individuals on their so-called corporate structure or company structure totem pole. Then perhaps the people in charge might have compassion upon the hard-working individuals that are making this world go round, instead of oppressing the shit out of them. Same thing with the politicians. Frankly, if we cannot have people come to their own rational, reasonable conclusion that when they create this much disparity on planet Earth, it's going to create violence and bloodshed. And the bourgeois, and all the so-called royalty, all the super wealthy, are usually the ones that get lynched and burned when the people revolt. And I'm letting you know right now that there's a level of seething rage building in the hearts, minds, and souls of the oppressed around this world for what you're doing to them in your personal greed. So you can either come to the rational conclusion to stop being so damn selfish and greedy, or perhaps we have to make laws that it is illegal for upper management, CEOs, to make, say, more than tenfold the lowest wage of whoever works for them. Something reasonable. It's not right that one individual lays off millions of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, whatever the case may be, for these now multinationals, just to give themselves $500 million in personal profits that year or more, and screw all the slave labor that are virtually starving to death with unlivable wages, having to work 2 and 3 jobs because corporations have gotten so damn greedy they hire a bunch of part-time people so they don't have to give benefits, decent wages, or overtime. When greed, due to detached investors, is more important than actually real products and services produced by satisfied and content individuals that are able to put food on the table for their little Johnnies and Susies. They have a decent life for themselves. It creates not just economic collapse, but a global crisis and morale so low that people contemplate revolutions, wars, and extreme violence. To get rid of all the lords and ladies of the world that put them in that state due to their personal greed. Frankly, man, I think the crisis is so bad that the government, instead of giving subsidized small business loans to every individual in the country that can come up with a reasonable product or service and say of necessity, in order to provide that product or service, let's say employs at least 10 people first day. As long as it is a viable, necessary product and service, should be given grants to once again create small business entities that are responsible for their products and services and will not sell out to those amassing huge wealth at the expense of oppression, tyranny, death, and destruction, not only of the poor of this world, but now taking captive whole nations in their greed and dictating to political leaders what policies they will make, what laws they will make, to their own personal greedy benefit, and to the suffering of the mass billions of the rest of us. Now, the solutions I propose are not just whimsical notions, but carefully thought out by examining and meditating upon human nature and the historical facts of what has brought about depressions and recessions all over the world. You can either continue to think that these are not viable solutions and let things get worse and worse, or you can address, once you discover what is the cause or the root cause of the problems, aggressively, as I say. Doing away with the Federal Reserve, no longer selling treasury bills or any type of national interest to foreigners, no enslaving the masses, traders that look all over the world for the lowest slave wages should have everybody in that corporation required to leave the U.S. or be tried for treason. For they have done just as if we were attacked by an outside enemy that took Fort Knox captive and stole away the wealth of our country. They have attacked this country and its ability to survive. And by definition, their actions in robbing national resources in their personal greed is treasonous. But our politicians haven't helped in their greed by creating excessive taxation when none is necessary. There is no need for taxing the public by any government upon its people. No need whatsoever. We, the people, have created and elected officials to represent our interests, supposedly. The founding fathers of this land gave them the power and authority to mint as many necessary coins and bills for the uniform medium of trade as necessary for we the people. In other words, as long as they're doing their job and working for us, the quality of life for us all, they have the means to create as many of those ducats as necessary to give us all a uniform medium of trade for quality products and services. Taxation is merely a form of an unnecessary oppression that had nothing to do with the foundations of this country, but had everything to do with the fact that greedy criminals crept into both politics and our industrialized growth. Until now, we've got the economic crisis we're in. They bail out their buddies and screw over the rest of us to the point where we're becoming indentured servants. And I say that the way to correct the situation is to get rid of the criminal entities that are so obviously manifest all over this world now, oppressing nations, oppressing governments, and actually placing corrupt individuals in governments that protect their greedy financial interests at the expense of all the rest of us. So I say we go after the multinationals, that whole structure that's so large that they are no longer personally responsible for their actions. When Pfizer got fined $2.3 billion, did all the stockholders have to pay personally out of their pockets for participating in criminal enterprises? This is what I mean. That corporations and multinationals, that entire entity, is proven to be evil because it creates private profiteering without personal responsibility. As such, let's get rid of Wall Street. Let's get rid of speculative investors in options, in the commodities, and let's have the poor set the price for our basic necessities. In other words, those working 40-hour weeks on minimum wage. Fix the prices for the basic resources. Energy, petrol. Let's get rid of petrol burning engines altogether. Be the first nation that mandates solar boosted hydroelectric motors in all vehicles that emit nothing but water vapor, no harmful toxins. Let's be the first nation to recognize that the economy is based on products and services, and get rid of this fictional notion of national debt. Let's create, once again, quality products and services by making education one of the highest priorities of our country, so that we have literate, intelligent, talented, skilled individuals entering all walks of life. Let us pay for quality education by employing engineers, construction workers all over this country to renovate our entire school systems and to bring it completely into the 21st century. Let us create a network between the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the executive branch, including the President of the United States, that is linked via the internet down to every municipality and township that has representatives, even down to every 100 persons within their town or municipalities that meet and then enter in on a monthly basis the needs for that township or municipality and what the morale of the citizens are indicating they need and even desire into this database that is then linked to a newly implemented infrastructure of additional representatives and committees that take the very best and the most drastic needs across the nation and present them directly to the House of Representatives and the President of the United States. In this way, we should once again get a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Let us make this database openly accessible to the public to read the many suggestions submitted so they can actually follow the proposals unto successful resolutions. Let us look back to successful implementations of our government in the history of this country and around the world, that during times of economic crisis, visionaries stepped up and said, we need to create the Hoover Dam, or other dams, or we need to address other infrastructures of our country, and employed many thousands of people in these visionary efforts. I suggest that a visionary effort that can employ mass thousands of people is in the construction of water precipitators, desalination units, a sub-transnational system, and a standardized method of cargo transit. In the cargo transit, we have cubes that fit inside the larger containers that now already exist and are then cubed off into categories off the rail system of the newly created subsystem, which should take a minimum of 4 decades to actually construct successfully, but will free up mass surface area and allow renovations of our existing superhighway infrastructures, where we can do away with tollways. Why? Because it will become the will of the people to use utilities, energies, again set by the price of the poorest of our people, to take the profits of utilities, energies, natural resources around the world to pay for the vision of the people to have a better quality of life. No longer subject to the whims of greedy individuals, but to common sense, rational thought, where the very poorest are no longer oppressed. Demographic development mandated so that everyone can afford to own their own home, flat, townhome, whatever the case may be, for the demographics of every region, as far as I'm concerned, around the world. The vision of creating a new super urban model of superstructures that incorporate not only wellness, not only entertainment, not only professional endeavor and day-to-day life, but preserving harmonious green space in the process. And at the same time, creating tiered farming and ranching that will no longer consume huge surface areas. Just some of the visions I mentioned in my dissertation addressing the President of the United States and the people of the world are enough to employ every unemployed individual on earth, including cleaning up all the Superfund sites of all the polluted regions, of all the greedy lawbreakers of our past and recent past. And in places of these cleanups, re-examining the current climate and planting the most fruit and nut productive orchards and gardens, maintained, once again, by the people, for the people. By employing expert botanists, biologists, landscape architects, and gardeners on down to the individuals that actually do maintain and harvest these protected regions for the people as a new form of national parks and recreation that actually provides for those suffering catastrophic disasters food and resources in times of need. I don't just have dozens of real and practical solutions, but hundreds, if not thousands. But none of these will work unless we all come back to the fact that God made us all, and He made us all equal. That both employer and employee cannot make anything happen without one another. And as such, we should automatically look after one another as God intended, true brothers and sisters. Now, when I've insulted some individuals and said I want them to take a good look in the mirror at what they've done to themselves and others and the horrible direction they are in of doing by making selfish and greedy choices where they're creating a hell on this earth and an everlasting damnation for their souls. And come to your senses. Once again, have a conscience that makes it unacceptable for you to enslave mass millions of people so you could hoard a few more blood-soaked bills to yourself. Seek the one true God so that pieces of paper with pictures on it are no longer more valuable than a human being. So that the eggs of eagles are no longer more valuable than unborn infants. So that every soul on earth is considered truly priceless. And the measure of whether or not you are fit to lead and how strong a soul you are is not by telling the people that work for you to work for less. It's not by telling the suffering of the earth that they are a financial burden. The measure of your worth, the measure of your character, is how well you are able to uphold your fellow brothers and sisters who, for whatever reason, are in trials and tribulations, health challenges, financial challenges, sociological challenges, having seen too much hell on earth, so that they cannot seem to find their way to the light, to truth, to love, to be able to work and be productive again. Please understand that apart from God being in every conscience, that the only way to keep from further greed and oppression, destroying quality of life for mass billions of souls on earth, is to actually uniformly agree to make laws that regulate that amount of personal greed from ever occurring, by unfortunately having to create laws like I've suggested, where it becomes illegal for upper management, CEOs, investors, owners, whatever, to make a certain multiple more than their lowest paid employee. That way, if they want to accumulate more and more and more and more, because they just feel this insatiable need, they will have to create more businesses so that they get a certain multiple and percentage from all of them, and thus employ more souls with more living wages, creating more products and more services. My solutions are not whimsical in notion. They are the result of considerable thought upon what happens to people devoid of the Spirit of God, and looking at the results carefully. I think it's a shame that we should ever have to create such laws, because individuals don't possess enough quality of character to see how they're destroying this whole world in their insatiable greed. But I say again, it's up to the people. Until you unite and stand together to unseat the entrenched corruption, the evil oppression of these greedy individuals that, based on my research, have satanic links and are individuals filled with the spirit of Antichrist. More and more hell will be manifest on this earth until decent individuals filled with the Spirit of God Almighty, bravery and courage, in love and faith, unite together and arrest these criminals for what they've done to mass millions of souls all over this world. A call to all those who've been investing in multinationals, not examining how they get their returns on their dollar, to no longer contribute to the problem, but be a solution by taking your money and starting businesses, investing in USA-made products and services to make this country great once again. Until then, quality of life for the vast majority of souls will continue to decline until there is global unrest and violence. People, if you all knew you came from God, and that God made the heavens and the earth, you would consider it unconscionable for any one or few individuals to hoard utilities, energy, water, food, petrol, coal, any form of natural resource, energy or utility to themselves. We can employ people to manage these resources, but the resources belong to the people, and the profits therefrom are to further endless, improved innovations, products, services, infrastructure as necessary for the growing and global populace. Until that understanding becomes universal, until you can grasp the idea of what freedom really is, so that you do not think, how are we going to pay for all this? when the persons in charge are empowered by you to print as many necessary ducats, to bring as many people together for the common vision of the people, to utilize those resources created by God for us all, for the benefit of the people. Instead of just a few individuals that understood that the political system is comprised of people that are susceptible to bribes and coercion. And so they said, look, I will kick you down X amount of dollars if you allow me to blow the mountaintops, deregulate environmental controls and standards so I can maximize my profits, and we'll rape all the coal that belongs to all the people, that is necessary and natural for the hydrocycle and filtering water down into the aquifers. We'll make bank, and we'll charge the rest of the populace the highest dollar possible until they groan under the excessive utility bills. And some freeze to death, and some go homeless because they just can't keep up with the greed. We have hospitals having to shut their doors. One, because of inefficiency. Two, because of the battle between their costs and insurance industry that refuses to pay. And so they hire whole armies of attorneys on both sides, increasing their costs to battle each other in their endless greed on both sides. Because we have individuals with inflated egos who think it's okay to charge hundreds of thousands of dollars per year for their services, called doctors. When they know that the public cannot afford their bills in their personal greed. But it's a dog-eat-dog world. Take care of yourself and screw everyone else, right? God made us to be interdependent, to love and care for one another. And I say, since we kicked God and the mention of God out of our public schools, that selfishness and greed is the inevitable result and vice of every kind. As God says, the wages of sin is death. Personal death, corporate death, and the death of nations. So no matter what solutions God gives us wisdom to implement, unless people join together, love one another, return to God, the solutions will not work. So brothers and sisters, learn the wisdom that our adversaries have taught us. And definitely get into politics, get into education, and take back this country. Start businesses and have a conscience. And landlords, Christian landlords, and Christian lenders, Be not excessive in your tenant fees or your usury fees. The scriptures say you shouldn't be telling yourself that it's okay to charge usury to your brothers and sisters at all. Instead, we hear how wicked your oppressed brothers and sisters are for no longer being able to contribute to your greed. The hypocrisy in America is that in the name of Christianity, the love of mammon has been preached in the form of the prosperity doctrine, so much so that sometimes Christians are the worst example of how to do business. And by that I mean they negotiate hard-working souls out of house and home, trying to get the most for the least every time. Instead of just considering, is it perhaps reasonable what the person is charging? I remember I was charging about half of the van lines, providing better service and relocation both corporately and residentially. And still, there were so many times that I had people argue with me about the bill and try to negotiate it down to the point where I couldn't even have paid the people that made their relocation happen, let alone stayed in business. And then to think that illegal immigration is not also a problem. When these individuals break our laws because they don't even know what our laws are, and so that those that are abiding by the laws of our country cannot compete with the slave wages of illegal immigrants. And so then legitimate businesses close and we get an impossible situation of illegal enterprises creeping up everywhere, driving legitimate business out of existence. Many of the individuals immigrated here because quality of life where they're at so terrible. And again, part of that reason is because through the WTO, multinationals are paying slave wages and oppressing the poor all over the world. So when I say I want to do away with these structures, it is because they are inherently evil and based on greed and lack of responsibility. What the United States should be doing with Mexico is working with the Mexican government in the same fashion as I'm suggesting are the cures for our nation, to create a quality of life there where we have stable, close national relations, so the immigration no longer continues, because they have a decent quality of life right where they're at with their families and loved ones. instead of becoming hated by the world through the mass intimidation of militant violence and preeminent strikes, clandestine unsettlement of existing political structures of other nations. Perhaps if we demonstrated a culture that was so envied, the people all around the world would ask their governments to perhaps imitate a true representative structure, like what I suggest. That because of population growth, a tiny group of individuals per capita cannot make adequate decisions, because in their group or circle of friends and acquaintances, they are completely out of touch with the result of every one of their greedy, oppressive bills and laws have on all the rest of us. If not, then they are truly evil individuals in their cruel oppression. So when I say we need additional tiers of representatives and committees that work down to representatives for 1 out of every 100 individuals, maybe even 1 out of every 10. That's what it was biblically. It's based on the observance that it seems our political leaders are completely out of touch with the masses and continue to bail out the criminal oppressors while we all suffer. I am telling the truth about what happened to me. And perhaps these individuals, somehow God will let them promote me to paradise, whether or not they think I'm going. I know him who cannot lie, swore that he'd never forsake me. And I know him that said that he began the work and he would finish it. Is faithful. And because I know that through no merit of myself am I going to enter into his presence, but because I am grateful for what the Messiah did for me in dying for me, it makes it easy for me to entrust my existence and my life for him. And whether I live or whether I die, and regardless of how my efforts affect the masses, that ultimately I seek only recognition and commendation from him. And that by my gratitude for what he did for me, I submit myself to my Maker, beseeching him always to do what's necessary in my existence to live righteously, to bring about the changes necessary to enter into his presence with a clear conscience, full of thanksgiving and praise. And I hope that many more souls on earth will determine that it is never wrong to do the right thing, regardless of whether or not you see others join in. That it is always right to do the right thing. Do not sell your soul for mere pieces of paper with pictures on it of blood-drenched bills called money. Do not sell your soul for some fleeting sexual favor or other selfish pleasure. To esteem that Christ beholds your every thought and your every action, and that you will give an account to Almighty God. That He does not sit there and weigh in the balances what you think are your good deeds or your bad ones. In the day that you commit the crime against God, such as you living in homosexuality and calling yourselves Christians, even if the rest of your life is full of altruistic benevolence, you will not enter paradise, still practicing sin. You must turn over all your life, your inmost thoughts, your inmost heart, your words, your deeds, everything that you are, saying, I submit to you, my Maker. Mold me, transform me, change me into that son and daughter that you are most pleased with, that I may enter your presence with joy and abide here on earth with peace with you. So that your soul might rejoice with God, even if everyone on earth turns against you. Even if friends and family forsake you, falsely accuse you, ostracize, excommunicate, or otherwise maltreat you, no one and nothing in this world should keep you from a right relationship with your Creator and Maker and the true and genuine lover of your soul. Not even stubbornly keeping private sins to yourself between you and Him, who died so that those things that separate you from what is the greatest in the universe would no longer do so. Money is not more important. Fame is not more important. Wealth is not more important. Nothing, no one, no thought, no word, no deed is worth not knowing Him right now and forever. Seek Almighty God by humbling yourself and calling upon the risen Lord and Savior of the world, Yehoshua the Messiah, commonly called Jesus Christ in English, right now. And as you read His Word found in the Holy Bible, ask Him to instruct you and to reveal to you your personal divine purpose, your general orders while on this earth are to do your best to try and tell everyone you meet that doesn't know Him how to know Him, and everyone that does know Him to love as your eternal brother and sister, and to bear one another's burdens as best you're able, if not in word and deed, as God enables, at least in prayer. So I lift my voice this day, saying to the oppressors of the world, that what shall it profit you if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? And I say to the oppressed, fight back. Get into these positions of power and authority and never compromise. Never accept a bribe. And don't let any wicked, perverse, mass-murdering devil intimidate you or coerce you or in any way, shape, or form persuade you to do evil and to compromise the commandments of God Almighty. Fellow brothers and sisters, I repeat, do the right thing, because it's the right thing to do, even if you get no reward or recognition in this life for having done so. God sees all, knows all, and you will reap in due season great reward if you faint not. So never give up. Never.